Now, after almost 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, Julian Assange was arrested this week and now faces possible extradition to Sweden, where he's been accused of rape, or to the US, where he faces charges of conspiracy. The Home Secretary will have a key role to play in his case, and we're joined now by one of his colleagues, the Energy Minister, Claire Perry, from her constituency in Wiltshire. Hello, thank you for being on the programme.
Hi, Sophie. Morning.
This morning. Julian Assange has always said that as soon as he left the embassy, then he would face extradition to the US. He's been proved right. Are you concerned about what extraditing him would mean?
Well, I don't think I'm going to comment too much on the kind of live details of that case, but clearly the actual warrant for going into the embassy was based on the extradition request. I know there are live legal charges against him, and we'll let the legal process play out.
I mean, he also faces allegations in Sweden as well, doesn't he, of rape and sexual assault as well. It seems as if, while the US and Ecuador were aware that the arrest was going to happen, Sweden wasn't actually aware. But if they do submit an extradition request, do you think that should take precedence over the US?
Oh gosh, you're assuming I know the ins and outs of the law. I mean, again, I'll let Sajid Javid
You must have an opinion,
on those issues. Well, I think my opinion is that here's a gentleman for whom there are pending legal inquiries, who's been able to seek asylum and also not be a particularly delightful house guest by the sound of it, and the process of the law has caught up with him, and it will, deal with him as appropriate.
But what's your view, though? Do you think that he should face the charges that, not charges, but face the allegations that were brought in Sweden?
Absolutely. I mean, if you have, this has been part of the challenge, I think, that for too long allegations of sexual assault or rape have been rather dismissed. And we've seen in the last few years that they've actually quite rightly been taken seriously. And so the courts will decide the validity of those challenges. And then as to who takes precedence in the overall extradition, as I say, I'll let our excellent judicial system decide that.
OK. Well, let's move on to some other issues, shall we? Brexit never farther away. According to a poll of polls in the Sunday Telegraph, if there was an election now, then Labour would be the largest party. Jeremy Corbyn would have the keys to Downing Street. And according to the president of the British Polling Council, it's because of the government's failure to deliver Brexit. Are you worried that the Conservative Party are going to be punished for the fact we haven't left the EU yet?
Yes, and I was listening carefully to what Ian Duncan-Smith was saying, and I think he's absolutely right, that I think there is such a sense of frustration that we wanted to be out by March the 29th, we could have been out, and the reason we're not out is that a number of colleagues, a lot of colleagues in my party on both sides, hard over on Leave, hard over on Remain, plus the opposition couldn't support what I think is a perfectly acceptable divorce agreement, if you like, the withdrawal agreement, and it's just so frustrating. And by the way, that chance is still there. So although we've had the extension, which none of us wanted, if we can pass the withdrawal agreement, in the next 3 weeks, then we will be out and we won't be fighting the European elections. And I agree, it seems really silly and daft to be doing that when the opportunity to not do that is absolutely in our grasp. But I was listening very carefully to what Ian said, and of course Ian voted for the withdrawal agreement, as I did. I voted for Brexit at every opportunity. The challenge is, I think, we have to face the world as we find it, not as we would want to see it. And we have an acceptable, pragmatic withdrawal agreement. We also have a parliament that wouldn't support no deal. It's made that very clear. In constituencies like mine, you can see the sheep may be in shot. This is an agricultural constituency. Whether we're here, whether we're in Cumbria, whether we're in the West Midlands, we have listened to businesses and the millions of jobs that they create, who have said a no-deal Brexit is completely unacceptable. Ian talked a lot about the backstop very knowledgeably. The backstop, in my view, will never be triggered because it's been absolutely clear that both the UK and the EU want a future trading relationship. So I think what's really important is that it's Easter, there's a chance to slightly reflect in the sunshine on what's been happening. It's been an awful, fractious, divisive time. Parties like the Brexit Party, to me, are just an absolute blast from the past, and what we should be doing is looking for areas where we can come together and create common ground and deliver Brexit, and then talk about the stuff that really matters. We're discussing with all this energy and passion and pain our future relationship with Europe over the next 18 months, 2 years. What I want to be talking about is what's happening with the climate. What are we going to do to move to a green Brexit that's entirely within our grasp, create those hundreds of thousands of jobs in the low carbon economy, and continue to be a world leader in cutting carbon emissions. So, I think all of us are glad not to be in Parliament this week, but we have to be using this time to reflect on how we actually come together rather than looking for ways to move further apart.
So you're talking there about the divisions, about people moving further apart. Our first interview this morning was with Anna Soubry, who was saying that
I heard, yes,
she simply doesn't really feel as if she can be a member of the Conservative Party now because it's the party that's changed, not her. She says she looks at people like Boris Johnson, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, like Mark Francois, and feels like she has more in common with MPs like Chikra and Luciana Berger. I mean, do you understand where she's coming from?
I do, and I also understand Anna, who has been a passionate Conservative, I mean, for decades, and she's a real loss to the party. It's always really sad when we lose colleagues from all sides of the political spectrum. But, the Conservative Party has always been a really broad coalition. Ian will tell you about the debates that happened over Maastricht and how we managed to keep wonderful people like Ian and also Ken Clarke in the party.
So is it becoming less broad?
No, well, I don't think so. I think what's happening is because Brexit was not a party line vote. I mean, Brexit absolutely divided the country right down the middle and divided both political parties right down the middle. And what we've got to do is say, well, 7 out of 10 of my colleagues, including me, represent a constituency that voted to leave, but 6 out of 10 of the Labour Party MPs represent leave constituencies. We have to find that common ground and deal with Brexit, which is a very specific and, in my view, non-party issue, because we're all Democrats. We sit in Parliament across party as Democrats and should be focused on delivering that referendum result. But what joins us as a party is our values, is our desire to build a future where everyone can get along, our desire to have a well-balanced economy so we can invest in public services. Those values are still completely intact. And that's why I remain perfectly comfortable in the Conservative Party, albeit really keen to get through this period of dissent and turmoil, which is not pleasant for anybody, and focus on the future.
We've got another 6-month delay, another sizable delay to Brexit. You were saying there that you don't believe there's any parliamentary majority for no deal. Honestly, do you think there is now a chance that we might not actually leave the EU?
No, I don't. I mean, I think also there's a pretty clear parliamentary majority to not have a second referendum of any sort, and also not to revoke. And look, honestly speaking, I mean, I campaign to remain. I have absolutely accepted the result of the referendum. I describe myself now, I think, as a sort of moderate Brexiteer. I can see the opportunities that are out there from Brexit, and I think so many of us feel that in Parliament. So to me, we were sent there to do all sorts of things, including deliver this Brexit result. It would be a real abrogation of duty of MPs to say, well, we can't decide, so we'll pass all these really complicated questions back over to people watching at home so they can really agonise about Brexit for the next few years. I don't think so. I think Brexit will happen. We're so close to getting this withdrawal agreement, the divorce agreement, over the line. We just need people to focus on coming together and compromise. And I think actually, when I go out around the country, people say, why are you not all working together to solve this? And as much as I agree with you, and I think Jeremy Corbyn would be an absolute disaster as Prime Minister, but I know that the values of the Labour Party when it comes to Brexit, they want to get out, many of them. That's what most of their MPs represent, as leave seats. There has to be common ground. And the first rule in politics, by the way, is have you got the numbers? And we have to get the numbers. OK, now a quick one, because I'm being told in my ear that I've got to wrap you, but I am keen to squeeze one more cheeky one into the interview. The climate change protest group, Extinction Rebellion, planning 2 weeks of protests to focus on climate change, obviously. They're the ones, if you recall, who stripped off in the public gallery in the House of Commons. You met with them in November. What did you make of them? Well, look, I'll meet with anybody who's passionate about solving the crisis of climate change, and so I'm not going to accept any people say, "Why did you meet them?" Well, because I'm really interested to meet with anyone. But I have to say, as I told them then, what I'm interested in is solutions, not tactics that are incredibly disruptive. And I'm afraid that the solutions they had, there weren't any. It was just, you need to declare a war. Well, I already think we've declared a war on this. It's become a fundamental part of our government policy that we continue to reduce our emissions. We've led the world in cutting our carbon emissions. Mrs. Thatcher was the first person that ever talked about man's impact or humanity's impact on the climate. So what I'd say to them is, we hear you loud and clear. There is no need to create mayhem for millions of people to get your message across. Let's focus on the solutions that we need to deliver. How are we going to capture carbon from heavy industry? How are we going to sort out transportation? How are we going to develop alternative fuels so that people can continue to fly, which is an important part of economic activity, without further pollution? I'm interested in solutions. I think we need more solutions and less protest.